There's a moment that happens to almost everyone who starts taking money seriously. You're sitting somewhere ordinary, maybe eating lunch, maybe driving home from work, and a number pops into your head. A number you've been quietly tracking for months or years, and something feels different. Not because your life looks different from the outside, your car is the same, your apartment is the same, but something in your relationship with the world has fundamentally shifted. That's what net worth milestones actually do. They don't just mark progress, they change the entire game you're playing. Today, we're talking about three specific milestones that are categorically different from every other number on your financial journey. Not because they're impressive to say out loud or put in a social media bio, but because each one of them restructures your reality in a way that cannot be undone. Once you cross them, you don't go back to thinking the way you used to think. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why these three numbers matter, what actually changes when you hit them, and the psychological and practical shifts that make them so powerful. Before we get into the first milestone, I need to say something that most financial content refuses to say. Net worth is not the same as income. This distinction is so important that I'm going to dwell on it for a minute, because confusing these two things is literally the reason most people never hit any of these milestones. Income is what flows into your life. Net worth is what stays. You can earn $300,000 a year and have a negative net worth. You can earn $40,000 a year and, over time, build a net worth that puts you in the top 10% of households. The milestones we're discussing today are all about what stays, what accumulates, what compounds. And if you've been measuring your financial progress purely by your paycheck, this video is about to change your entire framework. So let's get into it. Milestone number 1. The number is $10,000. I know what some of you are thinking. $10,000? That's it? That's the first life-changing milestone? Bear with me, because the reason this number is transformative has almost nothing to do with what $10,000 can buy you, and everything to do with what it represents about who you are becoming. Here is what most people's financial life looks like before they hit $10,000 in net worth. They're living in a state of financial fragility. Every unexpected expense, a car repair, a medical bill, a sudden job loss, becomes a crisis, not an inconvenience, a crisis. It means debt, it means calling family members, it means the kind of stress that leaks into your sleep, your relationships, your work performance. Financial fragility is not just uncomfortable. Research consistently shows that the cognitive load of financial stress measurably reduces effective decision-making capacity. When your brain is occupied with survival-level money anxiety, you literally have less mental bandwidth available for everything else in your life. The first $10,000 in positive net worth breaks that pattern. It doesn't eliminate risk, but it creates a buffer between you and disaster that most people in this country never actually build. According to data that has been cited across multiple financial studies over the years, a significant percentage of American adults would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense from savings alone. Think about that. Hundreds of millions of people are one unexpected bill away from financial stress. $10,000 puts you firmly on the other side of that reality. But here's the psychological dimension that nobody talks about enough. When you accumulate your first $10,000, something happens in your brain regarding your relationship with money. For the first time, you have proof that you can delay gratification over a sustained period. You have evidence, actual evidence in the form of a number on a screen, that your financial choices compound over time. This is not a small thing. This is identity-level evidence. You start to see yourself differently. You stop being someone who is waiting for the next paycheck and start being someone who builds. That identity shift changes every financial decision you make from that point forward. There's also a mathematical reality that kicks in at this level. When you have very little savings, losing a small amount hurts a lot. When you have $10,000, small setbacks don't derail you. You can absorb turbulence without reversing your trajectory. Psychologists have a name for this kind of dynamic in other contexts. They call it resilience. Financial resilience at the $10,000 mark is where the journey actually begins. Now, here's the honest part. Getting from 0 to 10,000 is harder than getting from 10,000 to 100,000 for most people. Not mathematically. Mathematically, obviously, the bigger number requires more money. But psychologically and behaviorally, building momentum from scratch against the constant pull of lifestyle spending, against emergencies, against the way modern consumer culture is literally engineered to separate you from your money, is genuinely hard. So if you're working toward this first milestone right now, I want you to hear something clearly. The difficulty you feel is real. It is also temporary. And once you break through to the other side, the game changes. Let's talk about what getting to 10,000 actually requires. It requires a surplus. That's it. Income minus expenses must be positive consistently over time. Every strategy in personal finance is ultimately about creating and protecting that surplus. Whether it's earning more, spending less, or both, the specific tactics matter less than the principle. Positive surplus, consistently applied, gets you to 10,000. And once you're there, the second milestone starts to come into view. Milestone number 2, $100,000. This is the milestone that most serious wealth builders talk about in reverent tones, and there is a reason for that. The journey from 10,000 to 100,000 where the fundamentals get tested. It takes real time. It takes discipline through market volatility if you're investing. It takes the ability to keep saying no to lifestyle inflation when your income grows. But when you arrive at $100,000 in net worth, something mathematically extraordinary begins to happen. And this is the part that genuinely changes everything. Let me introduce you to the concept that makes the $100,000 mark so significant: compounding. You've heard the word, you probably know the basic idea, but I want to walk you through what it actually feels like at this level because the numbers become viscerally real in a way they simply are not at lower balances. Assume $100,000 invested in a diversified portfolio, earning an average annual return of around 7%, which is a historically reasonable figure for long-term stock market investment. In 1 year, that portfolio generates roughly $7,000 in returns. Without you doing anything, without you going to work, without you selling anything, $7,000 in returns on money that is already sitting there. Now, here's what makes this extraordinary. $7,000 is more than many people in the world earn in an entire month of work. At $100,000, your money is beginning to work at a scale that is actually meaningful, and it only accelerates from here. At $200,000, those same returns approach $14,000 per year. At $500,000, you're looking at $35,000 annually. The curve bends upward in ways that become almost hard to comprehend. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, reportedly described the first $100,000 as the hardest to accumulate. The reason is exactly what we've been discussing. Below that threshold, compounding is mathematically real, but practically invisible. Your returns are small relative to your contributions. You are doing most of the work. But once you cross $100,000 and continue adding to it, the money starts pulling its own weight in a way that you can actually feel and measure. There's also a milestone within the milestone here. When your investment returns in a given year exceed your annual contributions, something shifts in the fundamental equation of wealth building. Let's say you're contributing $5,000 per year to investments and your portfolio earns $7,000. Your money is now generating more wealth than your active saving behavior. You have crossed from the accumulation phase into something that looks genuinely different. This crossover point typically happens somewhere around the $100,000 range for many investors, depending on contribution rates and returns, and it is profoundly motivating when you see it happen. The psychological effects at the $100,000 mark are also significant. Anxiety about financial emergencies largely disappears, not because you're wealthy by any grand standard, but because you have substantial backup. You have options that people without savings simply do not have. If you lose your job, you can cover living expenses for an extended period. If an opportunity presents itself, you can act on it. If you decide your current career path isn't right for you, you have the financial runway to make a change. Options are freedom, and freedom changes how you show up in every other area of your life. There's also a psychological shift at this level that's worth naming. When you have $100,000, you start thinking in percentages rather than absolute numbers. A 5% gain is no longer just a number, it's $5,000. The math starts to land emotionally in a new way. People who hit this milestone often describe a qualitative change in how seriously they take investment decisions, asset allocation, fees, and tax efficiency. Because at this balance, 1% in unnecessary fees is literally $1,000 per year. That money suddenly feels real in a way it didn't when the stakes were lower. I want to address something here that comes up a lot when people discuss this milestone. What about people who live in expensive cities? What about people dealing with student loans or low wages? These are real constraints. I'm not pretending they aren't. The path to $100,000 looks different depending on your income, your debt load, your cost of living, your family obligations, but the principle remains consistent regardless of your circumstances. The mathematical and psychological transformation that occurs at this level is not reserved for people with high incomes. It is available to anyone who creates a consistent surplus and lets time work. The timeline might be longer for some people, the sacrifices might be greater, but the destination and the transformation it brings are the same. The other thing I want to say about this milestone is that it rewards patience in a way that feels almost unfair. The people who struggle the most to hit 100,000 are often the ones who take money out of investments during market downturns, who pause contributions when life gets hard, who spend windfalls instead of investing them. The math at this level is unforgiving of inconsistency, but it is extraordinarily generous to the person who just keeps going. Now, before we get to the third and most transformative milestone, let me briefly recap what you gain at each stage so far. At 10,000, you gain security and a new identity as someone who builds rather than just spends. At 100,000, you gain momentum and the unmistakable experience of your money working on your behalf. The third milestone takes both of those things and multiplies them by something that completely changes your relationship with work, time, and choice. Milestone number 3, financial independence, your FI number. This one doesn't have a universal dollar amount because it's different for everyone, but the principle is precise. Financial independence occurs when your passive income from invested assets covers your living expenses. The most commonly referenced framework for calculating this is the 4% rule, which emerged from research studying how long investment portfolios could sustain withdrawals without running out of money over extended periods. Here's the formula. Take your annual living expenses and multiply by 25. That's your FI number. If you spend $40,000 per year, your FI number is $1 million. If you spend $80,000 per year, your FI number is $2 million. The idea is that at this balance, you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually to cover expenses. And historically, with a diversified investment portfolio, you are unlikely to run out of money even over a 30 to 40-year period. But here's what I want to focus on, because the math is well documented elsewhere. What I want to talk about is what actually changes when you hit this number, and it is, without exaggeration, one of the most profound transformations available to a human being in modern society. Work becomes optional. Let me say that again and let it land. Work becomes optional. We live in a world where the relationship between survival and employment is so deeply wired into most people's psychology that the phrase work is optional almost sounds like a fantasy. Most people wake up every single morning knowing that if they don't perform, they don't get paid. And if they don't get paid, the whole structure of their life starts to unravel. That reality shapes behavior at a level most of us don't consciously examine. It shapes how we interact with difficult colleagues, how we respond to unfair treatment from employers, which opportunities we pursue and which ones we dismiss as too risky, how we speak our minds or don't. Financial independence removes that pressure entirely. And when it's gone, the difference in how you experience your days is not subtle. It is total. People who reach financial independence often report that they continue working, but the nature of that work changes completely when it's a choice. The best analogy I've heard is this. The difference between volunteering and being conscripted is not primarily about the tasks you perform. It's about agency. The tasks might be identical, but one of them is your choice and one of them is not. And that distinction changes the entire subjective experience. Work you choose feels energizing. Work you have no option but to perform, regardless of how meaningful it might be in other respects, carries an undercurrent of compulsion that you only fully recognize when it's no longer there. This is why financial independence is not really about money. It is about time and autonomy. Money is just the mechanism. The actual prize is the recovery of your time as a resource you control completely. How many hours you work, when you work, whether you take 6 months to travel, whether you pivot to something that earns less but matters more to you, whether you spend Tuesday afternoons at your kids' school events instead of in meetings. These are the real returns on the decades of building. There is also an effect on your relationships at this level that deserves mention. When you are financially independent, you stop tolerating situations and people out of economic necessity. You can be honest in ways that financial dependence prevents. You can end relationships, professional and personal, that are draining you without the fear of economic consequence. The quality of every relationship in your life has a chance to improve because you are no longer bringing the suppressed resentment of someone who feels trapped. Now, the path from 100,000 to financial independence is not short for most people, but it is arguably more straightforward than the path from 0 to 100,000, because at higher balances, the math is doing enormous amounts of work for you. Your contributions still matter, but compounding now accelerates your progress in a way that genuinely begins to feel astonishing if you track it over time. The psychological challenge at this stage is different too. Below 100,000, the challenge is discipline and consistency. Approaching financial independence, the challenge is often patience and perspective. You're so close to something so meaningful that the temptation to take shortcuts, to take on excessive risk in search of faster returns, can become genuinely dangerous. People have lost significant portions of their wealth in the final stretch by getting impatient. The same discipline that got you there keeps you on track. There's no shortcut through the last mile. I also want to address the criticism that financial independence is only for people with high incomes or unusual frugality. It is true that a high income accelerates the timeline. It is also true that extraordinary frugality can compensate for a lower income to some degree. But the more important truth is that financial independence exists on a spectrum. You don't have to hit your full FI number to start experiencing some of its benefits. Partial financial independence, having enough invested that you only need to work part-time, or having enough that you can afford to leave a toxic job and take time to find a better one, delivers real freedom even if it's not the complete version. Every $100,000 you accumulate is buying you some measure of the autonomy that full financial independence provides. You don't have to reach the summit to breathe easier at altitude. Something else worth discussing is what happens after financial independence. For many people who reach this milestone, the initial emotional response is not the euphoria they expected. There is often a period of adjustment, of figuring out who you are when your identity is no longer structured around the requirements of economic necessity. This is a real phenomenon. It's not a reason to avoid the milestone. It's a reason to think about what you actually want your life to look like before you get there, so that you arrive with intention rather than disorientation. The most fulfilled people who reach financial independence seem to share a common characteristic. They haven't just been working towards the absence of financial obligation. They've been working towards something: a creative project, time with family, travel, service to a community, physical health, learning. Financial independence is most powerful not as an ending, but as the beginning of a chapter you actually wrote for yourself. Let's bring this all together. 3 milestones. 3 distinct transformations. The first $10,000 makes you secure and proves to yourself that you can build. It's the foundation that ends the cycle of financial fragility and rewrites your identity. The first $100,000 makes your money a meaningful participant in your wealth building. It introduces you to the real power of compounding at a scale that is emotionally and practically significant. The third milestone takes both of those things and multiplies them by something that completely changes your relationship with work, time, and choice. Here is what I want you to take from this video beyond the numbers themselves. Every one of these milestones starts with the same thing, a decision to take seriously the difference between what flows through your life and what stays. Income is a river. Net worth is a reservoir, and the size of your reservoir is ultimately determined by how consistently and intelligently you manage the gap between what comes in and what goes out over years and decades. The path is not linear. It is not always comfortable. There will be periods where the market drops and the numbers on your screen make your stomach hurt. There will be life events that demand money you had planned to save. There will be years that feel like you've made no progress at all. These are not signs that the journey is broken. They are the journey. The people who hit these milestones are the people who kept going when the road was hard. If you found this useful, I'd encourage you to share it with someone who is at the beginning of this path, because the most powerful thing you can give someone who is just starting out is not a tip or a tactic, it's a map of what's actually possible and the reason it matters. That's